Okay, Kingpin Johnny from Doylestown, PA. He wants us to talk about Jim Thompson.
Hmm.
Where do you rank him in the crime fiction firmament, and do you personally like his work? And can we talk about his impact on films, both as to the many neo-noirs adapted from his novels and as to his brief collaboration with Stanley Kubrick on The Killing and, interestingly, Paths of Glory? Okay. And I like when you went, when I said Jim Thompson. So
Yeah,
what's your take on Jim Thompson?
I am a fan of Jim Thompson. I think he's a great crime writer. I don't really know. It's kind of hard. He's very much his own writer, which is something I like about him. Like you can't really lump him in like with Hammett and you know Chandler and those guys. Like it's something really different
Oh, I agree
from that.
completely. Yeah.
And it's I just remember the first time I read The Getaway. I got to that ending, which is
Insane.
insane. And this is true. The next month, I spent reading P.G. Woodhouse
Hmm.
just to kind of like chase
Palate
it
cleanser.
away, a
A
palate
palate cleanser.
Like I
Yeah.
needed something to get out of that dark space. And then actually, the first time I tried to read The Grifters, which was actually before the movie came out, I had picked it up and I got to kind of the first scene when you realize there's something really wrong with his relationship with his mom. And I couldn't finish it. I really freaked out. There was something about the way he wrote about that was really unnerving. So I didn't actually read it until after the movie came out, and then I talked myself into reading it.
it's
But
not
that,
it's not like that weirdness wasn't in the movie. I mean,
yeah, it was. But something about
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
what I
And
mean. It
also
was
there's uh in the grifters, there's the really uncomfortable stuff with the nurse
yes,
Carol. That
yes, very uncomfortable.
yeah, that's kind of hard to take. But
Yeah,
um, I would say that. Well, it's interesting when you said that he doesn't really fit in that category with those other writers,
yeah.
right? Who are mystery and crime writers. And I consider Jim Thompson to be almost the definitive American noir writer. And I would not hesitate to put him at the top of that list,
Hmm.
right? Because even probably for me more so than Cornell Woolrich, because
Hmm.
Woolrich, he writes these twisted stories that are really compelling and suspenseful, but Thompson really delves into the psychology of these
Hmm.
warped people, much
Hmm.
more so than Woolrich does.
Yeah.
And for that, I do sort of consider him the ultimate American noir writer. And I would consider the two preeminent noir writers of that era to be Jim Thompson and Patricia Highsmith. I
Hmm.
think those are
Yeah.
the two. Look at all the movies that have been
Yeah.
adapted from both of from their bodies of work, and it's really interesting that there was this renaissance in the 80s. I guess it was. I can't even remember when the Grifters came out. Was that like 91 or something
Yeah,
like
it was in the
that?
90s, and then there were several other Thompson
There
adaptations
were a
that
bunch. There was After Dark, My Sweet, and
yeah,
This World, then the
then the
Fireworks,
fireworks.
and then there was a really good one that nobody's seen called The Kill Off.
Oh, that's a good movie. That's a
Yeah,
really good movie because that's a good book too, and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
a
It's
really good
it's
adaptation of it. I think that was a woman director.
it was I can't remember her name right now, but yes, a female director, and it was good. I really enjoyed that, and then of course there was the Peck and Paw film and The Getaway, but that was a little before all of it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that the supposed renaissance in neo noir at that time was really a Jim Thompson renaissance.
Hmm.
I mean, he just became hotter than ever, which he predicted.
Yeah.
because his books did not sell well during his lifetime. He wrote a lot of paperback originals that,
Hmm.
like David Goodis, that got no respect from literary critics or anything. The French, of course, got it. But then he said, you just wait. He told his wife, when I'm dead, they're going to figure it out. And that's exactly what happened, which is noir in and of itself, right?
Yeah. And I would also like to bring up also The Killer Inside Me, the version with Stacy Keach is an amazing film.
Yeah, Burt Kennedy directed that, and it's
Yeah.
totally overlooked, and it's actually it's weird. It's a very weird movie. Susan Tyrrell is in that as
Yeah,
well,
she
right?
is. She's
She's
great in it.
terrific. And then the version I didn't like the version that Michael Winterbottom made. That was like I don't know how old it is now, like 10 years or so
Yeah.
ago, where Casey Affleck played Lou Ford.
Yeah.
I didn't like it for an odd reason. It wasn't that the very creepy, violence, where he beats the woman to death. That actually didn't bother me as much, I'm sorry to say, as the fact that the film was utterly devoid of humor.
Yeah.
And that because the whole weird, sick, psychotic point of The Killer Inside Me, to me, is the psychology of this guy who knows that the badge allows him
Oh
to
yeah.
exploit his authority
Oh yeah.
to do all this stuff to people.
Yeah.
And he finds it humorous.
Oh yeah, there's a scene like because he also sort of acts like he's a little slow. And like it's just this incredible scene at the beginning where he's like basically kind of fucking with this guy by being like kind of slow. And it was just
Exactly.
like, and that was like the beginning of it, and you're like, okay, I'm really hooked.
Yeah,
And
he plays with people.
yeah,
He's like a psychotic Columbo, like
yeah,
Columbo
oh,
gone bad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
See, that's a good, yeah, that's a really good description.
he puts on this act like he's an Okie,
Yeah,
who doesn't really understand much, but he's really the devil.
yeah,
And I just found that Casey Affleck's performance just was utterly devoid of humor.
yeah.
Like and I just didn't get that. And so it probably would have been even more criticized if they had kept the humor in.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No,
and
and I just sorry. I just
nope.
wanted to put in about the badge thing, because in his autobiography that he wrote, I think it's Rough Boy, Jim Thompson told the story behind that character, which was that, there's a bunch of wildcatting in Texas at that time where
There's a
people,
bunch of wildcatting going on in your room right now too.
yes, the other kind of wildcatting.
They couldn't take this. They didn't like The Killer Inside Me either. So both Charlotte and Emily took a powder there.
You think Charlotte would like that? But anyway, so he basically had a job going down, like so he'd be in the middle nowhere pulling down the rigging that people put up for wildcatting is when not like individuals drill for oil somewhere. Sorry, I realized I
Yeah.
probably should explain what that meant. And so he was out there, right? And this cop came up and was kind of hassling him and just kind of was like, Tom said he looked in his eyes and he realized there was like something really wrong with this guy, this cop. And second, he was in the middle of nowhere. Like this guy just could have killed
Could
him
do
and
anything.
left
Could
him
do
there.
anything with him.
Could have
Yeah.
done anything to him, and there would have been nothing he could do about it. So that was the inspiration for the character.
Yeah. Really interesting. And as for his work with Kubrick, I mean, there's a lot of contention about that because Thompson was always upset because he felt like he really wrote the script for The Killing, based on Lionel White's novel, Clean Break. And Kubrick took a writing credit on it that Thompson did not really feel Kubrick deserved. And he left him with additional dialogue by Jim Thompson, which
Yeah.
you can easily pick out in the movie. What's Jim Thompson? But it didn't hurt their relationship so much that Kubrick didn't ask Thompson to write on Paths of Glory as well, which is an all-time classic.
Yeah, it's a great film.
And as you may know, when Kubrick died, they found an unproduced treatment that Thompson and Kubrick had done for a film they were going to make together that never got off the ground, called The Lunatic at Large. And as far as I know, I mean, as recently as early last year, there was still talk about that thing getting produced. I know that Ed Pressman, the producer Ed Pressman, thought he was going to make that film like 20 something years ago, but it never happened. And I haven't read it. There's a script online that I don't really understand what it is, because it says, screenplay by Stephen Clark. And I don't know if Stephen Clark, if that's an authorized screenplay or whether he just somehow found or was connected to the 70-page treatment and just wrote his own version of it. But because I don't know if this Stephen Clark is attached to the film that was supposed to be going into production last year. But we'll wait and see what happens with that, because I see no listing for that film. I check in on that like every 4 or 5 months to see if there's any movement, and there isn't. There's nothing listed on IMDb, and I know of no, I don't know if it's in production or what.
Yeah. We should just probably just mention that there's been a couple of French films that were adaptations of Jim Thompson as well.
Well, Bertrand Tavernier's Coup de Torchon is fantastic. That was Pop 1280 that he adapted, and oh God, I'm drawing a blank now. Cire Noir is unbelievable, and I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting the director's name right now. But that's a terrific movie. It's a lot of great adaptations of Jim Thompson, that's for sure.